What is the highest level of international negotiations that you have engaged in, that you have led in? Because the Secretary of Defense does lead international security negotiations. There are three main ones that the Secretary of Defense leads.
Right from the beginning of this exchange, you can feel that this is not going to be a routine or comfortable interview. The tone is immediately serious, and Senator Tammy Duckworth establishes control by asking direct, pointed questions that demand clarity rather than general talking points. This kind of approach is critical in political discussions, especially when the goal is to move beyond rehearsed narratives and into real accountability. As the questioning begins, Pete Hegseth appears slightly cautious, choosing his words carefully. However, there's a noticeable hesitation in how he responds, which suggests that the questions may not align perfectly with prepared responses. In high-pressure interviews, even a slight delay or shift in tone can signal uncertainty to viewers. What makes this moment especially engaging is the contrast in communication styles. Duckworth is structured and precise, while Hegseth seems to rely more on broad framing rather than direct answers. This dynamic creates a subtle tension that keeps the audience invested. It's not just about what is being said, but how it's being said. Pauses, phrasing, and body language all play a role in shaping perception. This opening phase sets the stage for everything that follows. It signals to the audience that this conversation will test not only knowledge, but also composure under pressure. And in today's media landscape, those moments, where preparation meets unpredictability, are often what define whether an interview becomes forgettable or goes viral.
And signs. Can you name at least one of them?
Could you repeat the question, Senator?
Sure. What is the highest level of international security agreement that you have led? And can you name some that the Secretary of Defense would lead? There's three main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other than serving in the military. So my job has been to...
So no.
This is the turning point of the exchange, the moment where the pressure clearly begins to show. As Senator Duckworth continues to press for specifics, Pete Hegseth starts to struggle in maintaining a consistent and confident response. The hesitation becomes more noticeable, and what might have started as a minor pause now feels like a pattern of uncertainty. In interviews like this, clarity is everything. When answers become vague or indirect, it immediately raises questions in the minds of viewers. Are key details missing? Is the speaker avoiding the question? Or is it simply a case of being caught off guard? Regardless of the reason, the impact is the same. Credibility starts to weaken in real time. What's particularly effective about Duckworth's approach here is her restraint. She doesn't interrupt aggressively or derail the conversation. Instead, she allows space for Hegseth to respond, and that silence actually increases the pressure. It forces him to fill the gap, and in doing so, exposes the difficulty he's having in forming a clear answer. This is where the interview shifts from being informational to being revealing. The audience is no longer just listening to a discussion. They're watching a moment unfold. These are the clips that tend to circulate widely because they capture something unscripted and genuine. Ultimately, this section highlights how quickly momentum can change in a high-stakes conversation. One moment of hesitation can snowball into a broader perception of uncertainty, and once that perception sets in, it's very difficult to recover.
Can you name one of the three main ones that the Secretary of Defense
talking about defense
signs?
arrangements. I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching about Status of Forces Agreements.
But you don't remember to mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. You're not qualified. You talk about repairing our defense industrial complex. You're not qualified to that. You could do acquisition and cross-servicing agreements, which essentially are security agreements. You can't even mention that. You've done none of those. You talked about the Indo-Pacific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount of nations in that, but I know we have allies in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, and trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr. Hegseth, none of those countries are in ASEAN.
Across.
None of those three countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations.
As the exchange moves toward its later stages, it becomes increasingly clear that the conversation is no longer balanced. It has shifted into a test of control and narrative framing. Senator Tammy Duckworth maintains a steady, composed approach, continuing to ask follow-up questions that prevent the discussion from drifting into vague territory. This persistence is a hallmark of effective interviewing, especially when dealing with complex or sensitive topics. Meanwhile, Pete Hegseth appears to attempt a shift in framing, possibly trying to redirect the conversation toward more general themes or broader perspectives. This is a common strategy when direct answers become difficult, but it only works if the interviewer allows that shift to happen. In this case, Duckworth does not. She keeps the focus tight, bringing the conversation back to the original question whenever it begins to drift. What stands out here is how the structure of the conversation shapes the final impression. Even without dramatic confrontation, the steady application of pressure leads the audience to draw its own conclusions. The effectiveness of this approach lies in its subtlety. Rather than forcing a moment, it allows the moment to reveal itself naturally. By the end of the exchange, viewers are left with a clear sense of how both individuals handled the situation. It's not just about who had the stronger arguments, but who maintained composure, clarity, and control. This is why moments like these resonate so strongly online. They go beyond scripted talking points and show how public figures respond when challenged directly. And that authenticity is what keeps audiences watching, sharing, and debating long after the clip ends.